I feel like for marketing purposes that this movie was called Ford versus Ferrari to help get proud American car owners into theaters. I don't get why it's called Ford versus Ferrari when that aspect of the plot is in the background and it's really about the partnership between Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles in their attempt to win the 24 Hours of Le Mans race while fighting the pushback by the suits at the Ford Motor Company. Regardless, Ford versus Ferrari is a very fun and highly entertaining movie. It's not groundbreakingly unique or anything to stir up any kind of politics. It's just a solid movie about friendship and business partnership as well as personal accountability. The movie sort of felt like a pecker measuring contest in the first act with the Ford Motor Company and the suits, Enzo Ferrari, Carroll Shelby, and Ken Miles, which would comprise of guys that have confidence and tinges of arrogance. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being proud of yourself as long as you can back up that pride. Miles has an English kind of F off, you bloody wanker sort of arrogance, pardon the terrible accent or whatever that was, and the movie reinforces the idea that he's the best driver for this job. Shelby has a Texan subdued arrogance that's more like he's just going to sit back and watch things play out because he knows he's right. He just won't tell you right away. As for the Italians, I'd say that their pride just comes from having magnificent looking cars and just taking names at previous Le Mans races. The Ford Motor Company really has nothing on any of these people. They're just good at mass producing vehicles, which isn't a bad thing. It's just not flashy and it doesn't draw new customers in. This is why Lee Iacocca, played by John Bernthal, has this idea to make a Ford car that can win the Le Mans, and it's how we get Shelby and Miles into the picture. I thought Lee would have a bigger say in this movie, but he just has this idea and shuts up for the rest of the picture. He's a company man, just like all the others, but he doesn't go out of his way to antagonize people. We don't get to know a lot about Carroll Shelby in Matt Damon's portrayal because we're not shown that he was the Larry King of the automotive world with 7 wives in his lifetime. We're shown practically nothing of his personal life. It probably doesn't help that he lives in his Airstream trailer alone. We have a cool Texan trying to make the best racing car that the world has ever seen. Nothing felt out of place with Damon's characterization. All the personal stuff is through Ken Miles with his wife and son. His wife Molly isn't featured too much, but she supports his passion for racing. Although I don't agree with the tone of a couple opinion articles about this matter, it would have been nice to get to know her better. I don't know whether the lack of characterization on her was due to not even considering it or to further the point that women during this time period were housewives that didn't get as much appreciation for what they did and who they were. His son Peter is in this movie a lot more than his wife. He is very interested in cars and racing, and Ken is there for his son. Peter just captured a curiosity that didn't feel overdone. As for Ken himself, he was charming, but not in a traditional sense. He's clearly difficult if he doesn't get his way, but he has to learn how to temper that side of his personality. It can be hard when you're right a lot of the time because humility is almost a foreign language. This aspect can be played up for laughs because of how the film views the racing culture of the 1960s. He just wants to drive the car. He doesn't care about the rules that distract from the sport. It gets into the notion that rules are meant to be broken, but more specifically if the rules are frivolous or don't cater to the protagonist of this movie. Despite his difficult nature, he's a decent family man. The racing sequences were tense and well made. I was on the edge of my seat. It did a really good job of capturing how fast these guys were going. I thought most of the daytime and nighttime races were well shot and looked great. The one that looked a little off was the one with Shelby that started the movie. It didn't look real or as good as the other sequences, but that could be due to the limited visibility. It also looked more like a flashback scene, so that could be why it looked more computer generated than real. I think it was supposed to simulate what the driver sees in the dark with headlights. I liked how it was a period piece, but it wasn't shot to look like one. It looked like a modern day movie with everything else appearing like they were from from 50 years ago. The soundtrack sounded original for the most part. I liked it. It fit the racing theme. Marco Beltrami and Buck Sanders, thank you for a cool original soundtrack that I actually would want to listen to again. This movie had blatant Coca-Cola product placement. Even the trailers made it obvious. Look at how they're holding a Coke bottle. That's not a coincidence. That's advertisement. Anyways, I liked the message of this movie. It reflected a reality of American life. A corporation, 9 times out of 10, defeats the ordinary person. But I appreciated how it also said that as long as you can live with yourself and your decisions, it doesn't necessarily matter what outside forces do to you. Life is supposed to be hard. Humans don't give up despite this difficulty. If we did, then we wouldn't accomplish anything. Facing adversity means that you'll have to make choices, and you might not know exactly what the outcomes of those choices are. So you should be happy or be able to live with whatever choices you make and then move on. You cannot be a prisoner to regret. Ford versus Ferrari does very little wrong with its right amount of heart. It's a fun and enthralling racing movie with great performances and showmanship from Christian Bale and Matt Damon. It just goes to show that if the Americans want to one-up the Europeans, they can, and they did in the space race, and they also did it at the 1966 Le Mans race. And after the 1960s passed by, America was given the Ford Pinto and the Chevy Vega.